Hello, you delightful individuals. Welcome back to the wonderful world of thirst and vanity, the home of hedonism here on YouTube. And today we're going to be doing something quite interesting. It's something that I haven't done in a long time, and I really wanted to have a look at it. And that is reaction videos, but very specifically reaction videos to historical sex themed things. So I've previously done reaction videos to sex education, like historical sex education from like the late 1900s. Weird saying that. Like 1960s, 1970s, 1980s. I've done that kind of thing. And today I wanted to do something a little different to that, but still potentially quite entertaining, which is reactions to anti-porn videos. Before we get into that, I would like to lay out the fact that I am an advocate for sex work and sex workers. Sex work is real work, and you as a human being should be able to do with your body what you want to do with your body. And if that happens to be sex work, then all power to you. You know, you should be allowed to do that and have rights to protect yourself and the work that you engage in, you know? I also find it extremely frustrating that, you know, every single brand in the entire universe, apart from children's brands, use sex as a way of advertising and yet condemn sex when it comes to anything outside of their region of advertising. A perfume company is perfectly happy to turn around and go, "Hey, look at this sultry, beautiful, naked lady. You should buy this perfume and you'll smell like this beautiful, naked lady." But they're not prepared to turn around and be like, "Hey, we're going to sponsor sex educators. We're going to give sponsorship to sex workers and sex performers and stuff like that." But anyway, enough of all that. We're here to look at anti-pornography videos, and very specifically this is a short film called Perversion for Profit, which is a 1963 anti-porn video. Little aside before we jump straight into the actual video itself, there is the elements of porn addiction and sex addiction and all of those elements. That is a much bigger subject that I'm not going to be talking about here and now. There's also elements of like semen retention and that entire thing, which again I'm not going to be talking about now. This is literally just going to be a reaction to this. If it ends up being that we bring those subjects up throughout the course of this, then we'll address them at that moment, okay? But until that time, let's just see where we get, shall we? Okay, the anti-porn short film from 1963, Perversion for Profit. This is from the YouTube channel, the Semen Retention Club, which naturally has coinciding views with this short film.
Hello there.
Hello.
I'm George Putnam.
Hello.
I'd like to begin with a fact. A simple yet shocking fact. It is this. A flood tide of filth is engulfing our country in the form of newsstand obscenity.
My God, a flood tide of filth? A flood tide of filth? Oh, I can't. What will we do? 16 seconds into this and we're already going well. A flood tide of filth. I am so ready for this. I cannot wait. Flood tide of filth. I think I'm going to actually put that as like a personal slogan for myself. Prepare yourself for a flood tide of filth.
Our country in the form of newsstand obscenity. It is threatening to pervert an entire generation of our American children. We know that once a person is perverted, it is practically impossible for that person to adjust to normal attitudes in regard to sex. Yet much of this material has been described.
Once a person is perverted, it is nearly impossible for them to adjust to normal attitudes towards sex. I'm genuinely intrigued as to what they are going to be explaining as normal attitudes towards sex. The idea of perversion being paramount to averting the normal attitudes towards sex is, I mean, for me as a pervert, abhorrent. Do you know what I mean? So long as it's between consenting adults, what the hell does it matter? Realistically speaking, come on, play the game, you know? Now, it does need to be said that from what I know of pornography, this was quite early on in what can be perceived as the newest age of pornography. Okay, so on the 3rd of March, 1873, President Ulysses Grant signed into law the Act for the Suppression of Trade in and Circulation of Obscene Literatures and Articles of Immoral Use. So that was like the first obscenity law, as it were, the United States obscenity law. However, that has been updated several times since then in order to keep up to date with the different varieties of obscenity. According to PBS.org, on top of the US law of obscenity, there was an update in 1957 with both Butler versus the state of Michigan and Roth versus the US, which basically put in regulations to stop pornography being exposed to children, which is understandable. So after the original instigation of the US obscenity laws, there was an update in 1957. So obviously 6 years later, they are seeing a lot more active pornography, realizing that sex sells in a more literal way than many will have suspected, which is where I'm assuming this kind of actual video comes in, is the regards of the morally superior individuals of the United States are campaigning against such immoral practices of pornography and what have you. And when it comes to not showing children pornography, I feel like that's common sense. When you start using won't somebody think of the children as a way to stop all activities that are between consenting adults, and if they choose to use that for business purposes, then surely that should be their choice, you know? It's up to parents to stop their kids from viewing material like that. It's not up to the wider government to stop that from happening. You know, it always boils my blood. Anyway, we are like 35 seconds into this, and it's got a good 19 and a half minutes to go.
Yet much of this material has been described as an illustrated, detailed course in perversion, abnormal sex, crime, and violence. It is also a fact that no matter who buys this material, 75 to 90% of it ends up in the hands of our children.
How? If you're buying pornography, surely you should be keeping it secret, keeping it safe. The vast majority of people buy pornography not to share with their partners, so I would imagine they would be keeping it secret and would be keeping it safe.
Keep it secret. Keep it safe.
So this is 1963, and they're talking purely about magazines.
Now, you might ask yourself, why this sudden concern?
Mm-hmm.
Pornography and sex deviation have always been with mankind.
True.
This is true. But now, consider another fact. Never in the history of the world have the merchants of obscenity, the teachers of unnatural sex acts, had available to them the modern facilities for disseminating this filth.
I love this. I love this. Give this man a medal. The way you are using your vocabulary there, my friend. I need to take notes. All right. The merchants of obscenity. Can I have that as a job title, please?
High-speed presses, rapid transportation, mass distribution, all have combined to put the vilest obscenity within reach of every man, woman, and child in the country. In the past few years, this obscenity traffic and salacious newsstand literature have become increasingly worse.
Have they?
Not only in content, but in volume. This traffic continues...
Wait, are you telling me that sex sells? Are you telling me that the average person across the United States, not including children, but are you telling me that they're inquisitive? Are you telling me that they may be interested in spicing up their love life? That perhaps the kind of normal man marries woman and they have nothing but missionary position isn't good enough for the vast majority of men, women, and, to be fair, non-binary individuals throughout the entirety of history. What is that? He literally said a second ago. He was just like, has this happened since the dawn of time and humankind? Yes, it has. Really? Really? That's fascinating. Interesting that you should try and squash it now. I thought there was going to be more of a Christian push on this, given the time especially. Their issue is the fact that it's so freely available by the sounds of things.
To increase and flourish for one reason.
Okay.
It is big business.
Yes.
Profitable business.
It is.
For the mercenary persons who produce it. And for its more than 800 distributors.
Stop. Hold on. Big business. Yes, it is a big business. Sex sells. We've talked about this. It literally is a multi-million-dollar business, despite the fact that payment processing providers are apprehensive about processing the payments for the sex business. But it is big business, and I love the way that he turned around and he was like, from these mercenaries. No, they call them corporations. That is literally the American dream, is capitalism. But anyway, let's continue.
The United States Supreme Court has described it as dirt for dirt's sake. We describe it as dirt for money's sake.
Okay.
Obscene literature is a $2 billion a year business. That's $2 billion.
$2 billion a year business in 1963? What does that equate to in today's money? Okay, so $2 billion in 1963 is worth $20,631,633,986.93. For 1963, that is a lot of money. That is all, well, theoretically speaking, that should all be taxes, and those taxes would then be going into the American economy, you know? Okay, so your regular income tax in 1963 was 3%. Bloody hell. Bloody hell. In 1963, this is American standard income tax. I'm not going to do all of the math and the calculations and stuff, but in 1963, the regular income tax in the United States was on approximately 3%, which means in 1963, providing everybody paid their taxes correctly, which obviously is a thing, the porn industry alone was paying $619 million in US tax a year, which, to put that into perspective, as they keep talking about thinking of the children, that actually pays for over a third of their entire education budget in 1963. So just as a point of comparison, thinking of the children, that 619 million covers a third of the American education budget in 1963. That is wild. And yet, it's a bad thing, friends. It's a bad thing because it's something to do with sex. Oh, the worst. The worst. The absolute terror. How dare they, right?
Through this material, today's youth can be stimulated to sexual activity for which he has no legitimate outlet. He is even enticed to enter the world.
No legitimate outlet apart from wanking. Masturbate. It's a perfectly natural thing. I suppose the same people that do this, it is from the Semen Retention Club YouTube channel. So the same people that are putting this out there are probably saying you shouldn't masturbate. No, you have no way of outletting yourself in regards to your personal urges, you know? Definitely don't masturbate. Despite the fact that if you don't masturbate, eventually your body will just make you have a wet dream. Despite that fact.
He is even enticed to enter the world of homosexuals, lesbians, sadists, masochists, and other sex deviants.
It was only a matter of time. It's 1963, Valen. It was only a matter of time before they went down that road. Homosexuality and BDSM. Because that's how it works. Looking at heteronormative pornography is going to make you want to have sex with your own gender. Their understanding of homosexuality was evidently seen as a sexual deviance, not an entire sexuality in and of itself, like we know better now. And of course, it is worth mentioning that the Stonewall riots that really kicked off like the Pride movement and what have you didn't happen for another 6 years. So the suppression of homosexuality, both internally as people who were homosexuals themselves, and externally of society suppressing homosexuality in the LGBTQIA, was very much rife during this time. It wasn't for another 6 years that the Stonewall riots happened and made the understanding of homosexuality more prevalent in society, because it is an understanding. These people are born that way. They are born homosexual, and that is perfectly fine. I was born bisexual. That is perfectly okay. There's no qualms around that, you know? But in this day and age, it was like, oh, if you can't masturbate, then maybe you'll go off and have some anal sex with one of your chums. Oh, terrible, terrible times. Yeah. Can't have that. No. That would be terrible. That would be absolutely terrible. Good Lord, the scandal.
The psychiatric terms for these unnatural sex acts are unknown to most decent adults in our country. But through this
the psychiatric terms. I'm going to be pausing this every few seconds. Good Lord. The psychiatric terms are unknown to all decent adults. I love the way that your perception of decent is evidently what you think the world is like, even though it definitely isn't.
Fallacious material, these abnormalities are corrupting the minds and the hearts of our children. Perversion for profit. Here is the most vicious, the most insidious feature of these publications.
The most insidious feature of this publication is an octopus, and thus the beginning of hentai.
They constantly portray abnormal sexual behavior as being normal. They glorify...
It's because it is normal. It's because it is normal. They personify abnormal sexual behavior as normal. It definitely is normal. It's completely normal. It's just beyond your narrow vision of what you consider to be appropriate. You absolute dingus.
Unnatural sex acts. They tell youngsters that it's smart. It's thrilling. It provides kicks to be a homosexual, a sadist, and every other kind of deviant.
I mean...
The Military Chaplains Association of the United States, practically every major fraternal, civic, and religious organization, the juvenile court judges, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, innumerable psychiatrists, sociologists, and psychologists, attribute the moral decay among our people in very large part to the obscene and pornographic literature so prevalent in our society.
Where are your sources? Who is saying this? Who in the FBI is saying this? I mean, it was only a matter of time before we got religion behind it.
This moral decay weakens our resistance to the onslaught of the communist masters of...
How did I not see that coming? Valen, it's 1963. How did I not see them blaming communism for pornography? Or not blaming communism for pornography, saying that by watching porn, you become susceptible to the maniacal ways of the communists. How did anyone look at this and take it seriously?
A major factor that makes youngsters prime targets for this printed filth is the natural curiosity of youth about the mysterious force of sex. Yet, on virtually every newsstand is a welter of misinformation, which can...
I'm gonna say it now, friends. I'm gonna say it now. I tell you what, if your sex education was better, they wouldn't be as curious. If you taught them about sex and relationships, not only the biology, but the dynamics between people, the different dynamics around pleasure, around consent, around understanding of what the body goes through, not only during pregnancy, but during sex. If you explained and explored these things and taught children the way that these things happen, they wouldn't be curious when their bodies are filled with hormones that are telling them to go out and do these interesting things. They wouldn't be as curious. You wouldn't have to worry so much about their curiosity taking them down immoral routes because they would have all of their questions answered. Their curiosity would be satiated by, or majoritively satiated by, the educational systems. But of course, they didn't. Sex education was appalling when I was getting it in the 90s, never mind 1963. Like, you can't turn around and blame children, which was they blame teenagers for being curious about something when their bodies are naturally, the instinct of our species is telling us to be curious, getting us to be intrigued, getting us to learn more about different aspects about ourselves and the people around us. It's pushing us to be exploratory, especially in a sexual dynamic. Like, don't educate them and then blame them for being curious. It's like, how dare you be curious when I've given you no information and I'm not prepared to talk about it? Disgusting.
Which can wreck them for life.
If there's misinformation, educate them better.
This is a book typical of many.
Okay.
It is called Sex Jungle. I would like to read you a passage from this book.
Oh, please do.
Not because it is particularly obscene, but because it portrays a philosophy that is aimed at our young people.
Okay.
This philosophy is not just in this book, but through all of this material. A 16-year-old boy, member of a gang, has just clubbed an old man in the course of a robbery, and he's thinking back over his accomplishment. Maybe he would die. That would mean I had murdered him. I smiled, trying the idea on for size. One of the things that always had cheesed me a little was that I had no kills to my credit. I'd been in plenty of rumbles, but somehow I'd never cooled anyone. Well, maybe now I'd have my first one. I couldn't feel very proud of sculling an old man, but at least I could say that I'd scored. That was a big kick. What are we alive for except to grab all the kicks we can? Sex, that's a kick. Sure, a damn good one. A guy can't ever get enough of that. Drinking, that's another kick. An okay kick. Marijuana, sure. M's good too, if you don't let it get the upper hand with you. Heroin, H. There was something to be said for that. I'd tried it. But horse isn't such a good kick because it takes more than it gives. And before long, you use it and you don't get any kick. There were others. Rape. That was a kick that I'd tried a couple times. It makes you feel real big to grab a girl, rip her clothes off, and take her. The way I figure it, you get kicks from what you do to other people. If you take something from a girl that she values, you've gained something. Or at least that's the way I look at it. I'm brainier than a lot of gang guys. I spend a lot of time thinking. Maybe I should have been a professor. And the way I thought it out, taking a girl's cherry's a hell of a gratifying thing. And so is murder. That was one kick I hadn't experienced yet. Taking life, that's living big. Only I wasn't happy about doing it this long, drawn-out way. An old man slowly dying. There wasn't much kick in that. But sticking a knife into a guy, twisting upward, that must be something. End of quote.
Well, that angered me. Like, you can't be a sex educator and deny the fact that sexual assault exists. That you can't do that. That's not a thing. But the fact that they're basically saying by watching pornography, you will lose all scope of morality, that you will join gangs, that you will take drugs, that you will murder old people, vulnerable people, of course. The fact that you will partake in homosexuality and BDSM, the fact that you will not care about consent, that boils my blood. As a pervert, that boils my blood. Absolutely. This is the first bit of this I thought was absolutely hilarious. This is the first time that I'm genuinely angry. I'm genuinely... The audacity. I would also like to point out the fact that he didn't read a single bit of that. He knew it off by heart. He knew it off by heart. In fact, you know what? Let's have a look at this book. What was it called? Sexual Jungle?
It is called Sex Jungle.
Okay, Sex Jungle. Okay. I've done a little bit of research into this. The book that he's specifically referring to is Sex Jungle, which was published in 1960 by Don Elliott, which was actually a pseudonym for the novelist Robert Silverberg. Robert Silverberg was basically trying to make smut in order to pay off his mortgage, by the looks of things. But it was a fiction book about ganglands, drugs, and sex. So, of course, it's going to be the best of us. That's like turning around and saying, hey, guess what? People who wear rings are really bad. You can tell by Sauron. Sauron, he wore this ring once, and as a result, everyone who ever wears rings, yeah, awful. The worst of the worst. I was so angry. I was so angry at this section, and now that I've actually realized that this wasn't like a sex education book, it wasn't like, it was literally a pulp fiction book. So yeah, condemning to say the very least. Good Lord, I'm not even halfway through this. I need a cup of tea. I need a cup of tea before I do this. Okay, I return with the savior of all woes, tea. Let's get on with it, shall we?
I repeat, my friends, I have not shown you these pictures and quoted from this material merely to shock you or make this presentation sensational. It is only to show what is openly available on your newsstands. And think of this. What you have just seen is not the worst material available. And yet, even this required editing to make it suitable to be shown in this film.
It's not here to shock you, friends. It's not here to cause aghast. This is a real display of the perversions of the world. Of course it is. Of course it is. Yeah. Everybody who indulges in sex goes around killing old people. Of course they do.
The vast majority of this material is too obscene to show or to quote to you.
I want to take a moment here, friends, because this actually highlights something very important for me. Actually, here we are, 1963. The things that I'm not showing you are too obscene for you to see. That's what he's saying. He's saying the things that he is refusing to show us are too obscene. But murdering old people is perfectly fine. There is a massive, massive juxtaposition, a massive, weird dynamic that has always boggled my mind. That it is perfectly okay to talk about the details of murdering an old person, but to discuss the details of sex is completely out of order. Murder, perfectly okay. Sex between consenting adults, no, not a chance. Don't talk about it.
Well, certainly other factors are contributing to the moral decay that concerns so many decent people today. But isn't it reasonable to presume that material such as you've just seen is one of the major factors?
No.
And
no, it's not.
It is important to realize that even if you knew that your own children would never, under any conditions, buy or read this material, if you knew this, and you can't know this, you must realize that they are constantly exposed to those who do read this material and who might be triggered into compulsive acts of sex violence. As I said...
Oh, there we go. There we go. There it is. That's the other big trigger that I was expecting. If you watch pornography, you are going to sexually assault somebody. Oh my God. This is such a preposterous concept. And it is literally propaganda. That's what it is. It is the height of propaganda.
Said before, the most insidious feature of these publications is that they glorify crime and ridicule law and authority.
What?
Vice is presented as fun. This warped idea of fun has contributed to the fact that 1 out of every 20 children born in the United States last year was illegitimate.
Really? 1 out of every 20 children. First of all, I don't know whether that statistic is correct or not. Second of all, do you think maybe, just maybe, just throwing it out there, maybe if you taught them better, if you taught teenagers better about sex, sexual dynamics, sexual relationships, contraception, then maybe there wouldn't be as much illegitimate births. This propaganda is fear-mongering for parents. Hey, if you're not careful, your child is going to murder old people. They're certainly not going to murder old people because of pornography. Fucking hell. Right, let's carry on, cracking on. We're getting on here, all right? And I'm stopping it every 3 seconds.
The rate of illegitimacy has been steadily climbing. And the care of these children costs taxpayers $1 billion a year in government aid. This does not take into account the human misery or suffering that cannot be measured in dollars and cents. What these
the human misery and suffering? Because the American people are definitely not including any kind of misery and suffering. The American government is not including any kind of misery or suffering to human beings in 1963, are they? What's that? The Vietnamese War from 1955 to 1975? 10 years of war where they did all kinds of horrifically inhumane things? But no, it's pornography that you need to worry about, friends.
Publications promote as fun has helped to increase the spread of venereal disease in this country. Reported syphilis has increased more than 300% in
300%? Maybe you should teach them about contraception.
The last 5 years. The incidence of gonorrhea has been steadily rising. One segment of the increase occurs among the expanding homosexual population. But even more startling is the fact that the greatest increase in venereal disease is among children 10 to 18 years of age.
You mean the biggest expanse of venereal disease is between teenagers who become sexually active between the ages of 10 and 18 years, or they get sexually inquisitive between the ages of 10 and 18 years. The bigger question you should be asking yourself is, where are they getting the VD from in the first place? The average teenager is not going to be born with venereal diseases. There are a few that are hereditary, it has to be said. They're not going to be giving the VD to each other. Or if they are giving the VD to each other, then where did one of party of that get it from in the first place? That's where my mind goes when these things happen. I think venereal disease, I think STIs as we now know them, and the chances of them coming from other teenagers, or the chances of them originating from teenagers, is highly unlikely. So where did they get them from? They don't want to ask those questions, though, of course, no, because they want to blame pornography for the issues. They don't want to look into assault on minors or statutory rape or anything like that. They don't want to look at those things, no. They just want to condemn pornography.
The increasing crime rate also parallels the increase in obscenity. A vicious crime of violence, murder, forcible rape, or assault to kill is being committed every 3 minutes. The total cost of crime in human waste, misery, tax, and material loss is beyond calculation.
Well, it's lucky that your prison systems in America are businesses, isn't it? And that they get paid per prisoner.
Sex-mad magazines are helping to create criminals faster than we can build jails to house them. This $2 billion...
Not if the jails are being funded by the American government and being paid by the American government for having people in them.
A year racket is challenging every mother and father in this country and everyone interested in the welfare of our children. The question is this: do you want your children stimulated and driven into an early, unstable marriage before they have had a chance to achieve the economic, educational, and emotional stability necessary for family life? Do you want your son enticed into the world of homosexuals, or your daughter lured into lesbianism? Do you want either of them to discover how to get sexual gratification by inflicting pain on themselves or by torturing other people? Do you want them to lose all chance of a normal, happy, married life?
Every normal, happy married life that I'm aware of is a little bit filthy. As for, do you want your child to be happy? I would like my child to be educated and to make the best decisions they possibly can based on an educated background, understanding, acceptance, consent, protection. These are elements that I would want my kids to go forward with. But this is 1963, so we can't expect much better from this, you know?
Opponents to the control of obscene literature state that the circulation of this material is the price we pay for freedom in this country. But the United States Supreme Court does not agree. Smut peddlers do not have the right to contaminate our society.
Can I now be known as a smut peddler, please? I don't even peddle any smut, but I want to be known as a smut peddler because that's a great phrase.
This is a nation of laws, and you and I have a constitutional guarantee to police protection of our welfare. The law is our weapon.
And yet you are definitely the first person to turn around and cry freedom of speech if someone turns around and says, hey, what you're saying is incorrect. It's interesting how freedom of speech always comes above freedom of bodily autonomy, right?
Here in a typical courtroom, a judge is instructing the jury in the case of a smut peddler.
Ladies...
Friends, we are seeing directly into a courtroom. I am ready, friends. Let's go.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Lakewood has a valid constitutional legal ordinance prohibiting the publication, sale, or distribution of obscene material. It is under this law that the defendant herein was arrested and prosecuted. The Supreme Court of the United States has clearly stated that obscenity is without constitutional protection. The Supreme Court has defined obscenity as material which deals with sex in a manner appealing to the prurient interest. That is, material having a tendency to excite lustful thoughts. It might be well to point out that it is not necessary to prove that this material has led to an act of violence or sex crime.
What? So, like, the law states that it can't be anything that incites lustful thoughts. But they don't have to prove the fact that the material incites lustful thoughts or engages in any kind of condemnation of society. They are happy to just be like, hey, this is provocative and therefore not okay. That is scandalous. That is absolutely scandalous. That's wild to me.
But merely that the material taken in itself is obscene. The test is whether, to the average person applying contemporary community standards, the dominant theme of the material taken as a whole appeals to the prurient interest. If material meets this test, it is without the constitutional guarantees of freedom of press and speech. Now you, the jury, must apply the test of obscenity to the material distributed by this defendant. You, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, are the sole triers of the facts in this case. The application of this legal test to the evidence is to be made by you and you alone. You, in effect, by your decency, determine the level of morality in this community. You, indeed, are the peers of the community.
And so, my friend...
Interesting. I always question these things, though, when it comes to crimes to do with sex work, or smut peddling, as they referred to it. Because it's like, okay, so what happens if somebody on that jury turns around and goes, actually, I don't think this is that bad? They will then be labeled by the court of public opinion as a smut peddler themselves, as a deviant. They will be perceived that way, and therefore there is an inherent pressure to not be seen in that dynamic, especially in like 1963, because everyone expected to be man, wife, 2 children. This is the way of things. Don't do anything outside of the norm, because outside of the norm is completely condemnable.
And so, my friends, the question is whether you consider publications, samples of which you have seen in this film, to be below your community standards?
No.
To find the answer, ask yourself these questions.
Right, I'm ready.
Would you display this material on your living room table?
Yes.
Do you find such material in the living rooms of your friends and neighbors?
Probably.
Would you read stories from these publications to your family or friends?
Probably, yeah.
Would you undertake to sell this material from door to door?
Yeah.
Of course you would not.
Whoa. What do you mean, of course I would not? You don't understand the level of community standards that I have, friendo. All right?
Your community standards are far above this depraved material.
Yeah.
Now, what can you do to solve the problem?
Oh, okay.
You've seen the nature of the problem.
Yes.
You've heard the legal solution.
Uh-huh.
But what can you as an individual in your own community do?
Tell me, please.
First, start with your own home.
Right.
Check your own reading and the reading matter coming into your home for your...
Friends, I've been corrupted by the smut peddlers. I've been corrupted by the tidal wave of filth. Because the moment that it says protect your own home and shows me a right hand, protect your own home. Make sure that your masturbatory materials are hidden away. Excuse me. Look, I'm evidently corrupted. That's it, right?
Entire family. Remember, children can be contaminated by magazines brought into the home by adults. Second, promote good reading.
I don't like the way they use the word contaminated. It sounds like a disease. But then I have to say, within 1963, they used a lot of words to make a lot of sexual abnormalities, as they called them, sound like diseases. Friends, homosexuality is not a disease. It's a sexuality that you are born with. And that's perfectly okay. Okay? God damn it. Right, back onto it.
Encourage children to use the library.
Yes.
Good books and magazines will help build positive values that are a protection against obscenity.
Right.
Third, check neighborhood outlets that display pocketbooks and magazines, grocery stores, newsstands, malt shops, everywhere from the corner drugstore to the barber shop. And if you find obscenity for sale, call it to the attention of the owner.
Is this like a call to arms? This feels like a call to arms. Go into these places that are deemed immoral, as per the standards of this propaganda, and find the pornographic material and call it to the attention of the owner. You there, owner! Did you know that you're selling this product that must be legal to sell, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to sell it? And I'm going to call you out for it. For you to turn around and go, yeah. As the person who owns the store, I'm going to put that stuff on sale because it's legal to do so, and I'm all right to do that. Go, my minions. I mean, good, decent citizens. Go, find these places. A call to arms. Call out this behavior. All right.
Remember, trading in stores that sell salacious material supports the obscenity racketeers. Fourth, report objectionable material to the police. Every arrest and prosecution, every conviction is a step in the education of the public to the solution of the problem.
And waste police time. Unless you know exactly what the law states and you find actual illegal material, then every single time you call up a police officer or call up the police as an industry and report this stuff, you are wasting police time. Hey, Mr. Police Officer, actually, there is a liquor store here who is selling completely legal material, but completely legal material that I don't like. That is just wasting police time. That's all it's doing. You are wasting police time.
Remember, the law is your weapon. Fifth, write letters of commendation to police, prosecutors, other public officials, and to the newspapers whenever they take action against obscenity. Such letters and other direct contacts inform the public officials how high your community standards are.
Right.
Sixth, form a committee for decent literature within your fraternal, civic, or religious organization. This committee will keep your own organization informed and active against this plague of filth. Form a Citizens for Decent Literature group in your community. Such a community organization will awaken people to the problem. It will provide speakers and other means to educate the public and arouse public opinion, which will support the police and prosecutors so that prompt, vigorous enforcement of the law can be expected.
Always
information and advice on the organization of a Citizens for Decent Literature unit can be obtained by writing to CDL, Box 12.
Okay, yeah, there's the propaganda side of things. Write to these people, get information back as to how you can be a decent citizen, and make sure that your personal views of what you consider to be an ideal society are enforced throughout your area. Okay, we're nearly there. Nearly there. Let's go.
12, Cincinnati, Ohio.
That probably doesn't exist anymore.
So you can see from what I have told you, shown you today, that a moral decay is spreading through our country and our society. This same type of rot and decay caused 16 of the 19 major civilizations to vanish from the earth.
What? What? That is a statement and a half. Pornography caused the downfall of 16 of the 19 major civilizations on the planet. Pornography. You are putting so much power into the realms of porn here. That is a lot of power. Could you imagine? Could you imagine? Mr. President, we are thinking about going and invading this place. We're going, sending all of our troops over and helping to murder entire populations of people. Well, we could do that, or we could just send over loads of porn. We don't need to, expend the lives of the troops of our nation when we could just, airlift porn. Give it a little while, their entire civilization's going to crumble. Don't worry about it. That is scandalous.
Magnificent Egypt, classical Greece, imperial Rome, all crumbled away, not because of the strength of the aggressor, but because of moral decay from within. But we are in a unique position to cure our own ills. Our Constitution was written by men who put their trust in God and founded a government based on his laws.
There we go. There we go. 18 and a half minutes. We've got 1 minute to go. And it finally comes in. It finally comes in as a prevalent moment. They've talked about religious organizations, but it hasn't specifically said anything about religion up to this point. And here we have it. The founding fathers created our laws based on God and this person's view of what God considers morality. We've got a minute left. Come on, Valen, let's go.
These laws are on our side. We have a constitutional guarantee of protection against obscenity. And in this day especially, we must seek to deliver ourselves from this twisting, torturing evil. We must save our nation from decay and deliver our children from the horrors of perversion. We must make our land, the land of the free, a safe home. Oh God, deliver us, Americans, from evil.
And there it is. And there it is. Deliver us from evil. The land of the free. Unless you are partaking in immoral subject material. You are free, but not free to indulge in things that they're not happy with. That's what that comes down to. That was a roller coaster, friends. That was an absolute roller coaster. I was not expecting to be that angry. I was not expecting to be that amused. I was not expecting anything in regards to any of that, to be honest with you. I went into that as completely cluelessly as possible, and here I am baffled. Bloody 2 hours later, I am baffled by everything that I have just witnessed. And it is propaganda. It's absolute propaganda, but especially that last little section there, because that really pushed the dynamic of the Constitution is on your side. The law is on your side. So no matter what you do, if you are unhappy about something, you're in the right. Because I, or specific propaganda expert person here, is saying that you are in the right. From an objective point of view, because it's a historical 1963 thing, I found it amusing that they were like, be aware of the misinformation, despite the fact that was all misinformation. Good Lord. Now, just before I talk about anything else, I did want to have a quick look at the background behind that specific video. So Perversion for Profit in 1963 was a propaganda film financed by Charles Keating and narrated by news reporter George Putnam. So they have taken a news reporter, somebody who is respected and admired within a community, and put him as the face of this propaganda. Charles Humphrey Keating Jr. was an American sportsman, lawyer, real estate developer, banker, financier, conservative activist, and convicted felon. What were you arrested for? So Keating started his anti-pornography campaign in 1956 and founded the Citizens for Decent Literature in 1958 in order to campaign against smut. Okay, so he was convicted in December 1991 of 17 counts of fraud, racketeering, and conspiracy. And then again in January 1993 of 73 counts of fraud, racketeering, and conspiracy. And then in 1994, there was a third case filed by the Resolution Trust Corporation against Keating and his wife, which was for $4.3 million, the largest judgment that has ever been made against a private person, which was then overturned in 1996. So the person that paid for this film to be created and led the anti-pornography movement from 1957 onwards, literally paid for a news presenter to talk about the corruption and the immoral values that pornography can create, was then arrested and convicted for fraud and conspiracy. Of course, because it's only corruption if it's to do with sex, right? I will say that was overturned later on, and obviously I don't know all the details of that, but I do find it absolutely hilarious that the conviction went through in the first place. Oh, this is really interesting. So within that movie, within the film that we have just seen, it says that Putnam erroneously cites the Supreme Court as having declared adult publications as dirts for dirt's sake, whereas that was actually a quote from the New York Court of Appeals judge and was in reference to a very specific piece of smut, The Tropic of Cancer, which was published in 1961. So literally, Perversion for Profit was actually propaganda. It was like a full-on propaganda thing, and anti-pornography, anti-sex work, because you're allowed to talk about clubbing old people to death, but you're not allowed to talk about sex. Good Lord, definitely not sex. And it really actually, to be honest with you, in conclusion of all of this, it just highlights the fact that sex education is so unbelievably appalling, and the condemnation of sex as a subject is so unbelievably rife. It was really pushed hard in the 60s, and obviously this was the prelude to the hippie movement, the idea of free love and acceptance. Very much shoot first and ask questions later. That's what it is. This entire scenario, shoot first and ask questions later. We don't want to understand the situation, because if we try and understand it, it might make sense. So instead, we will commence the fear-mongering to create a scenario that is so scary for parents that they feel like they have to act to protect their children, to protect their kids. And I think this is one of the reasons why so many of these things come down to, won't somebody think of their children? Because when you are a parent, the first thing you want, the first and last thing that you want, is for your kids to be okay. And that's why it becomes such a targeted narrative for these things. And if you don't think of your children in exactly the way that we tell you to think of your children, then your children will be the cause of the downfall of society. But that was really interesting. That was really interesting. I do like going back and looking at these kind of videos. Anyway, thank you very much for coming with me on this journey, and what a journey it was. If you would like to come and talk to me about it, friends, come over to twitch.tv/ValenVain, where I talk about sex and all kinds of different bits and pieces. We normally do like a Just Chatting stream on Monday evenings at 7 p.m. GMT. You're welcome to come over and have a conversation with me about it then. I am more than happy to talk about pretty much any subject. So yeah, by all means, come and have a chat. You can also check me out on TikTok, where I do like whimsical facts about sex and little tidbits of my own philosophies and ideas. You know, they pop up on there. And of course, you can check me out on Instagram, where we do lots of behind the scenes stuff. And I'm getting more into being artsy with that kind of thing. So please, by all means, come and check us out. Come check us out. The socials. Check them out. If you haven't already, I would really appreciate it if you would consider subscribing to the channel. I haven't done something like this in a long time, but I do enjoy doing these sort of extended reaction videos to historical media, as it were. And of course, I do a whole lot of other things regarding around hedonism, sex education, and stuff like that. So if you like that kind of thing, give us a subscribe. If you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, because it helps me in the algorithms. I'd really appreciate it. And if you have any suggestions for things that you think I should react to, then stick them down in the comments. I am really enjoying doing some of the reaction videos and stuff, and I really enjoy doing this. So if you have other suggestions of things I should react to, I would genuinely love to hear about them, okay? So stick them down in the comments, and I'll see what I can do. I'm going to counter this this propaganda and say, hey, do what you want with who you want, so long as it's all between consenting adults. Fucking go wild, experiment, have a good time, enjoy things. But remember to keep your boundaries in place. Remember to check in with your partner. Remember, safe words are your friends, and you should never do anything with anyone unless they have a safe word there. It's like a condom. It's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it, okay? And remember, don't do anything I wouldn't do. Because if I wouldn't do it, it'll fucking kill you. I'll see you later.